Wasn't expecting it to be as chick flicky as it was. There's not been too many, but there have been a few lines where I'm like, how did this make the final cut? I think that Evelyn Hugo is fast service. Do you get your food quickly? Yeah, but I dare you not to like them. Hey y'all, how's it going? And welcome back to another ThuREADSday. If you are new here, hi, my name is Jasmine. I am an avid book reader and a writer, and on Thursdays, we talk about the most recent book that I read and I do a review on it. This week's book is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Ever since I picked up this book, I have heard nothing but good things about it, while simultaneously knowing not a damn thing about it. All I knew was that there's a girl named Evelyn who had 7 husbands. There's a girl named Evelyn who had 7 husbands, and this is her life story. That's literally all I knew about it previously. But it got such good reviews that I couldn't help myself but to buy it when I was in Costco, and I got it for like $10. So a steal. We love Costco for that. As much as I would love to give a long and rambly intro in good fashion, such as Evelyn Hugo's iconic Hollywood looks, and running along the theme of not giving too much away in the beginning, let's get right into it. I'll come back once I'm done reading chapter 3. Hi, Nessie girl. Hi, everybody. This is the first 3 chapters update for The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. And if I am being honest with you, I've read 7 chapters. It was kind of hard to stop at the 3rd chapter because I was very interested in what else was going to happen. I read ahead a little bit, my bad, but I'll make sure to give you my impressions of how I truly felt about the first 3 chapters. I wasn't necessarily thinking of a specific genre, but I guess that I wasn't expecting it to be as chick flicky as it was. But I don't hate it. Generally, that is not my go-to. I am generally not somebody who reads really girly books, and there's nothing wrong with reading really girly books. That just usually isn't my vibe. But this book, definitely a girly book, but I kind of love the way that it's set up. So basically, in between a lot of the chapters, or at least the first 3 chapters, they inserted different journalism stories. And they were like from clippings of newspapers. There was also one that was definitely like a computer, and then there were comments underneath for the computer story. And it was just very interesting because in my head, when I read books, I am a very visual thinker. So if you asked me, imagine an apple, I would literally imagine a perfect photogenic apple in my mind. I'm thinking of like the really, really dark red crispy ones, the ones that don't taste very good in my opinion, but they look really nice. So that's just kind of how my brain works. So if you give me some sort of word or some sort of sentence for me to imagine, I can imagine it pretty well. But in this case, I actually kind of imagined it like I would a movie. And so part of me was thinking about how I would write a screenplay of this movie to make it like really interesting and somewhat quirky, but also like serious in some other portions. So far, I'm definitely intrigued, and I think the reason I am more intrigued about it is because several years ago, I actually worked for a journalism company. So the main character being a journalist and following up with a story kind of hits home to me. Even though I was never a reporter and I was just on the social media side of things, it kind of reminded me a little bit of my old job, and it made me excited. Overall, I mean, like, no complaints. I think I have been pleasantly surprised of how much I've liked this book. But I am going to give you a side rant because I feel like this book deserves this side rant. This book, for some reason, has been dubbed a TikTok book. But it's not. It's not a TikTok book. I know what you guys are gonna say. You're going to say that TikTok has been out for a really long time. Y'all, we all know that TikTok did not take off until the year 2020, until we were stuck in our houses afraid of the coronavirus, okay? We all know this. And this book was popular before TikTok was really popular. So I wouldn't necessarily dub it a TikTok book. I just feel like I needed to get that off of my chest because I promise that I do have plans to read TikTok famous books, but I quite frankly do not think that The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo is in that genre. Like, the first time that I heard about this book was not TikTok, definitely not TikTok. It has been a very well-known book years before TikTok. Anyway, sorry about my rant. You guys can still love TikTok books. I haven't given many of them a chance yet, but I just simply don't agree that The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo is a TikTok book. Sorry, not sorry. I am going to continue reading on until a third of the way through and give you my updates. So far, I have read through one husband. It was a very short-lived relationship, so not too much to report. That's pretty much all I got until we get to a third of the way through. Hey everybody, I am a little surprised of how fast I am able to read it. I think that it is definitely helpful that the chapters are very short, but there are a lot of chapters. That actually is a way that I prefer to write a lot of my books, is very short and concise chapters that kind of helps the reader along, making them feel a little bit more like they are making progress with reading the book, rather than having these ginormous chapters where even just getting to the end of the chapter is a chore. But I feel like that's more of a personal preference on my end because I have a really hard time focusing for long periods of time. So the chapters are short, and also the language is pretty simple. Even though this has a lot of adult themes to it, I would say that this is probably a reading level of somebody who is like in middle school. At least that's like the language that they are using a lot of the time. I wouldn't recommend middle schoolers reading this. I can understand why it is loved on TikTok. And I don't mean that as an insult, but what I do recognize about this book is that it is easy to read. It has a good flow to it. So I feel like a lot of people who aren't generally readers would find this book easier to read than some others. And of course, there are those classic like one-liner Wattpad-esque writing inside of it. There's not been too many, but there have been a few lines where I'm like, how did this make the final cut? This isn't matching the rest of the style. This was very much a throwaway line that you would find any 13-year-old writing a story about on the internet. I also have been surprised of how much I have been enjoying it. Is it my favorite book in the world? Not yet. I'm definitely going to continue reading it. I feel like I'll be able to get through the book pretty quickly, which is making me excited. I feel like I need some occasional book breaks like that. I mean, as much as I absolutely adored reading Mistborn, it was literally a workout for my brain reading it, so I think that's why it took so long, is just because the times that I did read it, I really had to hone in and focus because I couldn't just scan the pages. I do speed read a lot. Once again, I have problems with keeping focus for long periods of time, but this one's a nice break from some of the books that I have been reading, which has been really nice. Not too much thinking. Once again, there's nothing like absolutely incredible or spectacular about it yet. But I'm only a third of the way through. What I will say is that it has been nice to see a lot of different representation from the get-go in the very beginning of the book. I know that I didn't mention this earlier, but it was just because I was trying to wrap up the first 3 chapters. But something that I did enjoy is that the first 3 characters that we are introduced to is obviously Evelyn Hugo, Monique, and Monique's boss. Her name is escaping me right now. But all 3 of these people are women, and all 3 of them are people of color. So I definitely enjoyed that portion and that representation. I don't know what else to say about it, so I guess I'm just going to go and I will catch up with you guys when I get to halfway. Hi everyone. So at this point, between a third of the way through and between halfway, it's definitely getting a lot more interesting. We've covered the background, we've covered the basics of the story at this point, and I think that initially the plot twist that came up was, I would say, like still very much a surprise. And of course that kind of happens after a third of the way through. And I think that they did a good job, and I made the mistake again of reading ahead. I'm sorry, it's just really easy to read. So you feel like you should read it because why not? It's really easy. And I'm not saying that it's an easy read as an insult, even though I know that a lot of times people use easy read as an insult because it's not like very well worded or something like that. But here's how I would describe it. I feel like if this book continues the way that it does, that this book is definitely like a fast service type of book. I compare a lot of books that are easy to read to fast food writing. That's what I call it. So fast food writing is not necessarily bad, but you can't really compare it to big pieces of literature. So to me, I think that Evelyn Hugo is fast service. It's like Chick-fil-A. Do you get your food quickly? Yeah. But I dare you not to like them. But because I read ahead, I got a little bit more context of what she did with her next husband. I believe we are on husband number 5 at this point. I just got to the point where there is a big section with her 5th husband, which, by the way, is the husband that she is with the longest. So this section, his section, is much larger than all of the other sections. There were a couple of husbands, or at least like a couple of sections, because each husband is a section of the book. There were a couple of them that were like 4 to 5 chapters long. That's how long they were married for. It was a very, very quick marriage. I do have to say that one thing that I do appreciate is in this book, there is a gay relationship. And I think that they did a good job on making this relationship seem more realistic, because I know that there are many times where in efforts to give representation to the LGBTQ plus community, there are, you know, some relationships that are represented in some books. They're not always the main character, often they're a side character, and I understand that a lot of times people think, well, the side character's plot doesn't matter as much, and I disagree. I absolutely wholeheartedly think that the side character story or the supporting character storyline is just as important as the main characters. Not for like the overarching plot. I don't think that a side character's backstory or story is more important than the overarching plot, but you could argue that the main character, the only reason why they are as interesting as they are is because they are so deeply embedded into the plot of the story. But there is no way that the main character would be able to be where they are without the people that are involved in their story, which are the side characters. So I give a lot of thought and a lot of love to my side characters, and I feel like this book does a very good job of that, and so I appreciate that. And so I think based on that merit, if you have a side character that is a part of the LGBTQ plus community, their relationship kind of gets skimmed over. And a lot of times, relationships start in situations that don't seem very realistic. I actually mentioned this in one of the books that I had read, and there was a lot of representation there for the queer community, but I was a bit disappointed because it seemed like we got one scene of, you know, the two girls flirting with each other, and then all of a sudden towards the end of the book, they're like, well, the end of the world is gonna happen anyway. Why don't you just kiss me and we can be girlfriend and girlfriend? I'm like, what? Like, they deserved more of a build-up, and I feel like this book actually delivered that. They gave the build-up, they gave the intricacies of the relationship, and I appreciated that. I really, really did, because I have been disappointed by books that have tried to show that representation before, and I just feel like they weren't given a lot of attention. But because I read ahead, I also I think kind of got a little bit tired. The reason why she got with husband number 3, 4, and now 5 are all for the same reason, and it's kind of just for show. So I think that at this point, I understand why they're doing it, but I also kind of feel like they're beating a dead horse at this point. So I guess I kind of wish that there was a little bit more creativity of reasons of why she married these different husbands, because it just makes every single new husband just predictable. So now I'm thinking that the next 2 husbands that she has after this 5th husband, it's just gonna be for the same reason as the first 3. So here's what I'm gonna do. This book is so easy to read, but I have been purposely putting it off, like putting off reading it for a few days, because I haven't really had a chance to film my thoughts on it. And I knew that if I started reading it past the halfway point, I wouldn't make a halfway point update. So it is a warm day today because I live in the southwest of the United States. So since it is August, it's very hot here. And one of my favorite things that I have done this summer is go swimming in the pool and then dry off on a lounge chair while reading. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna see how much I can read and go from there. I feel like I shouldn't film myself right after I finish reading the book. I have so many thoughts and feelings. They're not bad. I'm very surprised. Here's the sad truth about me that I don't always love admitting. I try so very hard to try and figure out the plot twists, and I think I'm good at them when I'm trying to figure them out. I'm like, I know exactly how this is gonna go. And somehow, this book pulled the rug from beneath my feet twice for the same plot twist. Didn't just happen once, it happened twice. And honestly, I was a little bit worried that when I was done reading this book, when I finished reading this book, I wouldn't like it as much as everybody else would like it. I was a good way through. Like, I was past 2/3 of the way through, and it still kind of just kept up the same beat. I was like, I can understand why some people like this book. I don't necessarily love it. Like, that's my thought process here. And then, oh gee, what page was it? Oh, that's why this is wonky. I put it up here. Okay, if you haven't read this book yet, do not look at this page. Do not look at it, or else it will spoil like a huge portion of the book. So don't do it. So I feel like the first time that this plot twist happened, I was like, okay, I was surprised, but I wasn't like, you know? Yeah. Anyway, page 359. Changed everything. Keep in mind, there are like 380 pages of this book. Literally, like the last 20 pages was where it all tied together. Like, now I don't know what to do. Okay, here's what I will say. If you are looking for an easy read, if you are either in a slump or you are feeling some reading fatigue, this is a good one to read. It was so easy to read, and it was very fast to read. It's a very fast read, which is why I think I understand why it was considered a TikTok book. But I stand by my previous claim that this is not a TikTok book. But I liked that the main character, because Evelyn Hugo is not the main character, I liked that the main character and Evelyn Hugo shared many things about their personalities, many things about ways in which they are represented, in ways that they think of themselves. So I think that there were a lot of very interesting parallels here. The plot twists were really good, much better than average in my opinion. I also could just be stupid, I don't know. I thought I knew, like I was like, it's gonna be this, it's gonna be something with this. Like, overall, I am happy that I have this book. I'm happy that I read this book. I feel like I would suggest it to people. I don't know if it's everybody's cup of tea. Once again, it is definitely more chick flick like. So if you are into that kind of stuff, I would say that it has a very, very good, meaningful ending for being that type of genre of book. I enjoyed it. I would suggest it to people. It's got good plot twists. I hope that me saying it's got good plot twists doesn't like ruin it for other people, because I feel like the book does a good job of keeping its secrets, much like Evelyn Hugo was. Thank you so much for this reading vlog. I am so tired. I am very tired now. I need a minute. So sayonara, you guys, and I will see you next time.